Will do.
Hit the got it button. All right, so anyone who's listening to the recording, Mike Granato's Starin is hosting here at D10, 12 o'clock now. We're going to do 10 to 20 minutes of why we're even bothering with this consortium and what we're going to get out of it, what we hope to get out of it, and where we're going to go in the future. With Mike being here, many of you who listen to this recording, and certainly Ray, you know what PBC has attempted to do. We didn't want to be all things to all people, so we hired the Prime AV and the Marshall AVs to make us look better and be better at what we do. And we want to go well beyond that. Craig will talk a little bit about the global scope of what we're attempting to do. And we want to modify the way we did it historically, because sometimes it worked and sometimes it really didn't work. And so in quick order, we want to gather data about what was wonderful, Mike, and what was crappy, Randy, and fix that moving forward. So we have the right expectations of an engaged consortium. Because we want to share revenue, we want to share responsibility, and we want to grow all of our partnership businesses. So that's as far as time use goes, 15 to 20 minutes of that up front. 12:30 D10 is going to give a review of their space here and their portfolio as it maps to both Zoom and Teams. And that Teams piece is new, pending a release today or tomorrow. And then top of the hour, we're going to do a quick walking tour of the space so Gary and Jeff can see the hardware in the room, but anyone who sticks around at the 12 o'clock spot will show you the walking tour with Randy as a tripod. So, Mike, have I missed anything as far as the overall outcomes that you were hoping for? Certainly the role that Starin plays is going to be an important thing when we pivot to D10. Craig, we dialed in?
I'm dialed in.
Ready?
Thank you for joining us, and appreciate the hosting from our D10 friends. So, historically, the consortium, and I'm getting up to speed. Randy brought this to me probably when I came back after being on military deployment in January, and kind of gone back and looked at some of the historicals and saw where the genesis of this originated out of the life size portfolio. And the overall mission statement that all of you signed on to and embraced was, in summary, to leverage each other's capabilities to drive financial outcomes. That was the benefit. I mean, we're inspired organizationally by revenue, and the stream of revenue gives us the opportunity to pay our employees, to grow our organizations, to do all of those things necessary, within the world of business and the customers we support. So, there was a whole host of rules and guidelines that were developed. I don't have a lot of history with respect to how, and I'm interested in hearing more about each of your opinions as to what worked, what didn't, as we kind of worked to relaunch, version 2.0 or 2.2 or more from what was. And then also to kind of expand the realm of opportunity looking forward, expanding the products and services and giving that product and services portfolio that we can bring into the consortium for you to sell actively into the market with our support and take a cut of the profits on those co-managed outcomes. So that's kind of looking forward is first, I think the first order of business is to kind of take a step back and look at and talk through from the organizational structure, what worked and what doesn't. Then we can kind of pivot, I think, onto, Randy, if you agree, onto kind of what the future looks like, talk about some specific technologies and direction that we can collaborate on with respect to where we want to go.
I agree. There's a couple of people that are new to each other. So we may want to pause for a few seconds and just do a couple of introductions.
Sure.
the intention to this consortium is becoming part of the story that the Perfect Video Conferencing and DCS merger is using to discuss our future with our investors. And so we're also looking to bring money to the table to help enable these partnerships. So marketing work done by us for you, lead sharing, tracking done by us for you. We were a loose association, so we want to get to a point where there are some AV consortiums out there with some really irritating revenue commitments and some really good rules of engagement. So we want to move, generally speaking, our rules of engagement was don't be a dick and do the job you said you were going to do. So we want to stay with that as a starting point. But the better part of the consortium had been, how do we do innovation and disruption and ideation together so that we can stay ahead of our competitors? So co-opetition among collaborators or in some competitors, so that we have the bench to compete against an AVI SPL on larger government or statewide projects. Or we don't need, this is a talented group that doesn't need to stay in the enterprise or mid-sized business lane. And so we're hoping that this enables a broader reach for every one of you. So with that, Craig, I think it's useful. Cale joined GIS, Ray, Prime AV, and Eric, Marshall AV. I think probably their elevator pitch and what brings them to the table. Eric won't have any information about what the historical was because he's relatively new to the table, but certainly to your question, Ray and Cale can give you some data on what worked and what didn't work. Eric's smart too, so he can make some shit up too if he wants to. So I would recommend then, Craig, you facilitate us through some data gathering from the three of them.
Sure. And I can, being part of the whole consortium, a lot of the times it was kind of almost like a therapy session, sometimes for everybody to just congregate, and so you wouldn't be on your own, it seemed like, right? We're all smaller integrators, and it really helped to bounce ideas off somebody else's head. So that's another aspect of the consortium that
which USB extender failed for you, or how did you solve? Cale and I still do those one-on-ones.
We did this divisible project, and we did this really, really great, but then we, kind of messed up on this portion. Where could we have gone better? So.
Okay. So I'm going to call that collaboration. And I had it in my mind and I just went blank as I was writing it down, but understood. So that
Collaboration and commiseration.
What's that?
That's Eric.
Go ahead, Eric.
Collaboration and commiseration.
Commiseration, ideation might be, yeah.
WTFing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect the good with the bad and then the ugly is how I'm going to break this thing up. So I'll classify that as a good thing, and an outcome is that you basically have an access to a pool of resources that can help with the without your outcomes, gaps you might have in technology understanding, things like that. So good. Any other goods? Cale, it's got to be something good, right?
No, I was just waiting for everybody to get done there. No, I mean, I think historically it's just been a place where, we all bring our certain talents or our certain pool of resources to the table, and we all can sell a lot of the same stuff, but there are some specialties that each one of us have.
Right.
And those things that each company brings to the table are valuable to those of us who aren't able to sell or don't have the knowledge of those things. And so whether that be in and around potentially Crestron programming, or whether that may be a piece of hardware that you have to be completely certified on in order to order, and the assistance in installing it. but yeah, the shop talk is invaluable. Hey, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you selling a lot of? Who are you butting up against in competition, and what are you doing to beat those guys? You know, those types of things.
Okay. Eric, you have anything at all? Ray?
Well, like Randy said, I'm kind of new to the group here. And so I'm, name of my company is Eric Low Voltage Services. So that's what I provide as a service to you guys for programming, things like that. And I'm excited because there's quite a few times where I'll have a customer contact me direct and they want me to do some type of install and I can't do it because I'm not a contractor. So I usually work under the contractors on my scopes of work, but it's nice to know that I've got contractors from the consortium that I could turn to, can get materials through guys. So yeah, I love having partnerships. So can't give you anything on the history though, because I'm so new.
Eric, were you a part?
Sorry, Eric, Craig, just one question that I know that you won't for Eric. Tell us about your BIAMP relationship, bearing the lead a little bit about where that's going for you.
Yeah, so I am a BIAMP independent programmer. So I have all the full certifications for BIAMP. We're actually also talking to them right now on their sound masking side. They've got a team that nationwide, they send out whenever they have sound masking jobs, and they're stretched thin. So they're actually talking to us about partnering with them to take care of a lot of the stuff on the West Coast and even out of state here. So yeah, I've got that. I can also resell their material, but mostly I'm an independent programmer, so I can't do any of the physical install stuff because I'm not a contractor, but I'm a programmer, engineer, designer.
And the exciting thing about that for us, Craig, is that when we were running into a couple of shit shows on really advanced programming, we went to BIAMP and said, who's the best that you have in the country? And Ray Diaz wasn't available, and Cale Canoyer weren't available. So who's the next best after Ray and Cale? And they pointed to Eric. So
that's right.
Good.
How do you like that tap dancing there, Cale and Ray?
That was great.
The other thing too, to piggyback on what Cale said, Craig, was that Mike and I originally started this because we didn't want the volume commitments necessary for anything other than the things we were really good at, but we wanted access to Crestron, or we wanted access. So prior to COVID, many resellers were stuck in a Vadio or a Extron lane, and they didn't deviate much because they had those commitments. That's gotten a lot more flexible, but the expertise is still a requirement. So we all can source anywhere. We all can go to a Starin and get whatever we need, but to get it right and to get it certified, it's always better to go to a partner that does that as their core thing, right? So it saves us all money in the long run. So PVC got a decent amount of life-size business from the consortium because they weren't certified and we were the ones who were. DCS got Crestron business from us because they were certified and we were. And that is going to come back. The need to find people in this channel who need the orders but don't have the volume, when the other person needs the expertise but don't have the time.
Gotcha.
One of the other benefits.
All right. Structurally, everything looked like, from my view, everything I saw from a structural standpoint looked really, really solid. You guys had published guidelines. It appears that you even had a kind of like a mini board that was, or a council, if you will, that was actually kind of engaged in kind of managing the overall effort. Was there value in the board or the leadership council per se? Did you guys see value in that?
Well, I never personally was on the receiving end of any of this, but I know that we had some issues off and on. Nothing horrible, I don't think. And no need to rehash some of that stuff. But, I guess there's got to be some level of someone holding those individuals or that situation accountable. So.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when you get, again, everybody has their everyone here is running their own business to a certain extent. So finding that, that common thread, that, that kind of all for one for all kind of approach provides a little bit of work. So everybody's kind of marching in unison in the same direction. So I was just curious from, as we architect this thing moving forward, how we get people engaged and to drive that, that outcome where we're all thinking alike and driving those same outcomes. But we can address that kind of as we move this along.
I think the biggest problem of some of the consortium work in that oversight, most of the oversight was when we were using the Life Size brand. There were a number of Life Size people in the global deployment program. Kale, Rich, and I, used to do a decent amount of volume with Life Size. Some of these folks, obviously Eric, who's new, and Ray, who wasn't a Life Size reseller, didn't have that level of oversight. This particular group, kind of, there were two channels essentially, Craig. This particular group usually voted with their feet, right? If they didn't like what they see, they didn't hire someone. Like, there was a New York partner that Rich did some work with, and they just, it sounded great on paper, and the simpatico wasn't there. So then the next project came along, and they chose someone else, and Rich chose someone else. It wasn't I don't like you. It's just that this wasn't as easy. So doing business in a way that's easy made sense. I think the gap on that sometime was if the customer doesn't pay Kale and PBC outlaid the equipment, or vice versa, if Kale outlaid the equipment and the customer hasn't paid PBC, my problem can't be Kale's problem. And that's going to be something we're going to need to correct for in 2.0, is the sub-agents just get paid and the owner of the project takes on the exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's going to be bound off of kind of a spirit of mutual trust to a certain extent that we're going to need to establish as probably one of the silent objectives, I guess.
Craig, could maybe I make a suggestion along those lines?
Sure.
I think Mike and Randy and some of the other guys that were involved all did a really good job of self-policing, I might say, is what it was. You get into an agreement or whatever, and the consortium was more the conduit to allow that agreement to take place. Again, we're all running our own businesses. We all have a lot of other things to do. Why couldn't that type of an agreement just take place between the two parties that are trying to do stuff together? And as long as the two parties agree upon it and have it in some kind of a quote writing, whatever it may be, no different than Eric writing programming, right? Send me a scope of work that you want this Crestron panel or this biamp, whatever, to do. Okay, great. Here's your quote. Okay, great. I programmed it for you. Oh, well, I need this to happen. Well, that wasn't in your initial scope of work. You agreed upon what I quoted you. In order to do that, that's a change order, done. I mean, what I hate to see is somebody have responsibility over and above everything that they're already currently doing to facilitate business within a consortium where possibly you're not getting any profit off of it. If Kale and Craig are doing business together and I sell Craig X and he agrees to pay it and he pays me, that's fine. Why should Randy or Eric or anybody else be concerned or have to worry about how that transaction takes place?
Okay.
I mean, why couldn't we just have a nice general conduit to allow business to help each other out along the guidelines of, like Randy said, don't be a Richard Cranium. And, if you are a Richard Cranium, then you won't be invited to the next meeting. That's kind of where we were.
Yeah. Randy, do you have any specific thoughts on that? I've got one, but I wanted to hear yours first.
Yes, and I'll use Ray as context. You know, it's a partner who accepts a deal delivers on a scope of work, right? And those exchanges between those two partners didn't need a consortium overlay to charge a fee for service, right? We were a conduit, not a management group, right? And you know, there are a couple of people. Betty, stop the recording, please. All right, we pivoted off a bit of a private conversation. Now we're talking about how we might enable the consortium. So this is a SharePoint location that Mehdi is working on for Jeff, our VP of sales, around, this is just a prototype. So it's, here's neat. Damn it, we didn't have the D10 board up on there before we're doing this. Yeah, take that down, neat. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, what Craig is suggesting is that there could be an umbrella of a consortium, and then under it, Prime AV could have a page that works similar to this, and then DCS could have a page. Eric, you know, Marshall AV could have one. So those that decide to participate could give us content that we put in a kind of a nested structure for public sharing of, you know, what Kale's superpower is. And we just give you all the keys to update this on a regular basis. Not a customer facing site, but a partner facing site.
Maddie, click on the documents tab. And so what this does, I don't know how many of you are familiar with SharePoint, but you can actually, it works like Microsoft directory, like like your standard directory. Within these folders, you can put anything. It's a repository, but it's a repository that can be used to kind of give a web look or a web front end, kind of click through kind of logic. So in theory, every consortium partner could have their own folder, and every consortium partner could put their own collateral in, or whatever they wanted, from a rate card to whatever it is you wanted. And it would be there ready accessible to anybody that was given access to this site, i.e. all of us in the consortium. So there's a lot of capability around this, and I just have to feel like that's a pretty important thing to be aware of what your consortium partners can deliver for you if need be.
Thanks, Mehdi.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to win. We have an internal contest between me, Daniel, and Mehdi to see who can create the best.
Yeah.
Sorry, Daniel, you're under the bus.
So that's kind of I think the high level of where we're at. I kind of feel like there's a bit, we've got some momentum. We just kind of need to put something to make it worthwhile for all of us. And so that there's, we're getting something out of it. And that usually means revenue generation, not just a distraction and taking away from business, but something tangible that you can use to convert time to outcomes, per se.
Wrapping up. Anything else?
No, I think that's a good place to kind of stop and transition, Randy, and
kill the recording.